Now we'll have the spokesperson for U.S. Senate candidate Bill Connor, Javan Browder.
Hello, my name is Javan Browder. I'm from Greenville County, South Carolina, over in Tigerville. I'm a member of the Greenville County Executive Committee. Also been involved in the Tea Party since day one. Served as the national co-director for the campaign to draft Jim DeMint. We had a campaign trying to get Jim DeMint to run for president in 2012. If there's any unsuccessful campaign I've regretted, it was that one, because I really believe if Jim DeMint had gotten into the race, he would be president now, and we would be in a lot different shape than we're in right now. But when you're thinking about that, you're thinking about those kind of conservatives as you want to step up and run. You look at different races. Looking back, one of the things when I attended the Tea Party rally, the 9/12 rally in Washington, D.C., my friend and I, on our way back, we discussed, we go to these rallies, we go to these events, these forums, these kind of things, but what are we really doing to make a difference? And all the way back, there was a race happening at that time over in my district, Congressional District 4. I'm not sure if that District 4 runs over this far or not, but at the time we had incumbent Bob Inglis. And Bob Inglis was a good guy when he first went to Congress, but he stayed there for 12 terms, or 6 terms, 12 years. And he was a good guy when he first went, but he was just in Washington too long, and it really got a hold of him. He began to become kind of more of a Democrat than a Republican, or more of an establishment candidate, more Washington than he was South Carolina. And it wasn't that he was a bad guy, but he just sort of lost touch. So we decided on our way back, the thing we could do to make a difference was to get behind Trey Gowdy and get him elected and get him to beat Bob Inglis. And we think about where Trey Gowdy is at right now. I believe it was a divine thing to have him in there as America's prosecutor going after this thing on Benghazi. And to tie that into this race, this U.S. Senate race against Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham's not a bad guy, but I believe he's been there 2 decades now. I believe he's been there too long. I believe he's become more Washington and less South Carolina. Not a bad guy. He's a very nice guy, very likable guy. He's done some great things for the state, but I believe it's time for a change. And I believe that we have a candidate similar to what we had in Trey Gowdy. Trey Gowdy was not a professional politician. He was a prosecutor. Bill Connor is a military guy, 23-year Army veteran. He served 12 years active duty as an airborne ranger, infantry officer. Since then, he's spent time in the National Guard and then gone to the reserves. He's volunteered for combat duty in Afghanistan, served as senior U.S. advisor in Helmand Province. Right before the surge, remember the big surge we had when the Marines came in? Bill Connor is the guy that laid the groundwork for the U.S. surge in Afghanistan. He was the guy in charge of that and transitioned to have the Marines come in. He was awarded the Bronze Star for his service there. He was just recently, about 2 weeks ago, promoted to the rank of full bird colonel, so he's taken the rank of full colonel. Will be officially soon. We think about, if you're for Lindsey Graham, that's great. I know a lot of us aren't. It's not that we're against Lindsey Graham. We just think it's time for a change. Things like voting for the confirmation of pro-abortion judges like Sotomayor and Kagan, voting for cloture on Obamacare when it required 60 votes for cloture, but then voting against the actual funding when it only required 51 votes. Things like that. They could have stopped the funding, they could have stopped Obamacare dead in its tracks, but Lindsey Graham enabled that, enabled the funding to pass, and kind of allowed Obamacare to get a foothold. So I believe it's time for a change, and I believe if you think about who can beat Lindsey Graham, you got a guy with $13 million, he's been there for 20 years. I mean, is it impossible? It seems like it. In many ways it might be. You got David, you got Goliath. It's going to have to come to a runoff. You got 6 challengers, and with 6 challengers, you're almost guaranteed a runoff just by the math. They don't all have to just pull off a few votes, percentage-wise, to be able to get to a runoff. But the question is, who can beat Lindsey Graham in a runoff? And it's not about my guy against your guy. If you're supporting amongst the challengers, we get some great challengers in this race, great people to choose from. It's not about the hometown guy or versus the guy across the state. It's who can go toe-to-toe with Lindsey Graham in a debate. Lindsey Graham has a very strong base of support in the military. In my opinion, Bill Connor is the only guy who can combine the military votes with go toe-to-toe with Lindsey Graham on foreign policy issues. He can take in the Christian right vote. He can take in the Tea Party vote. He has the broadest base of support if it were to come down to a runoff. Some of the other candidates have great bases of support. So I would ask you, in conclusion, I would just ask you to think about that. Think about, if it gets to a runoff, who is that person that has the best chance of defeating Lindsey Graham? I believe it's Bill Connor. He's been dead right on foreign policy. He was dead right on the Arab Spring in Egypt. He wrote an article at the time predicting exactly what would happen. He opposed the war in Syria. But he believes in peace through strength, a strong military. He believes in getting rid of the Federal Department of Education. Common Core is great to be opposed to it, but if you don't get at the root of it, which is getting rid of the Federal Department of Education, Common Core is kind of it can be re-brought up, relabeled, whatever. So Bill wants to restructure that. And last thing I'll say is in the 1980s, we had 80% of all members of Congress are veterans. Today that number has dropped to 16%. We see what's happening with the U.S. military, like General Livingston was talking about. It's being gutted. We're fixing to cut our Navy down to 280 ships as opposed to almost 1,000 in 1964. Bill understands that. He'll fight for the U.S. military. He'll fight for the constitutional rights of Americans. I ask for your vote and for your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you.